Welcome back to the Missoula podcast. In the studio. Happy Tuesday, Brando. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. We got John Velk in studio. We're just diving in. Let's just go.
Go.
John, what is your favorite Grizz basketball game of all time that you recall? You were sitting there courtside. What was the game?
You know, I think it had to be Anthony Johnson when he went off against Weaver and we came back and climbed the hill. Unbelievable. You know, I watched a lot of great games in the 80s. Crisco and I are about the same age and those guys. So we got some great games, but it always seemed like DeMaco at MSU got us and got to go to the NCAA tournament. So I don't have as many fond memories about that.
That Anthony Johnson game.
Johnson's,
crazy.
Is he the best player for the Grizz that you've seen, or who would you put in that category?
Oh boy, that's hard. That's hard. You know, best is so subjective because, I mean, you want the best all-around athlete was probably Scott Zanin. But, you know, his stats don't show crazy in any one area, you know, that way. Crisco was unbelievable. You know, he just got better and better. And he was one of those guys that when you're done with the game, some of the games you're like, well, I don't think he did that well. And then you'd look at the box score, which wasn't on a phone then. You had to wait for the next day. And in the Missoula, and it's like, wow, he had 23. I thought he had 8.
Yeah.
You know, and you'd forget. So it's always the quiet guys that you don't really recognize, you know, the Andrew Straits that helped us beat Nevada in the NCAA tournament. Those kind of guys, it's like, oh yeah, he made that layup, he made that tip back, he made that.
What is it about Grizz basketball that keeps you renewing those season tickets, coming back every year?
You know what I think it is, and it's really kind of a bummer. You know, I sit courtside there, but we just don't have the turnout we used to have. This used to be only a basketball town.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody went to football. I was homecoming royalty in '86, and we got to go to Dornblaser Field and be in the president's box. And when I got up there was nobody there. There was a little paper plate with some veggies and ranch, and that's it. And I'm not lying. There was nobody there, and it was homecoming. And I'm like, I tell people that, they're like, no way. And I'm like, yeah, that's the way it was. But when we went, you'd have to get there 3 hours early for a regular Thursday night game during league and wait in line. And you got to remember, if you left to go to the bathroom, you're doomed. So you couldn't really tie one on ahead of time and drink because you leave, you lost your spot.
Yeah.
It was just a sardine can and nobody delivered food. You sat there and you were there for the 3 hours pregame and a couple hours during the game.
Did that all change in 1995? Is that when
they did the remodel?
Mm-hmm.
They did the remodel and they kind of changed things up. And
like I remember growing up sitting like a Golden Grizzlies, just the mascot was Otto at the time.
Yep.
The place was just packed.
Like we had 9,500 capacity then.
Yeah.
And it was full. Most every regular season, you know, conference game was full Thursday and Saturday, not just the Cat Grizz. Then we lost 2,000 seats in the remodel, but they're nicer seats, you know, you're not sitting on. But then they kind of kicked the kids to a smaller area, and that's what brings so much excitement. You know, you watch Gonzaga, but that's what I remember. That's my experience of college. That's my experience.
And the copper and gold.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it was
the old
iconic.
Copper and gold. And you know, you had Weber State's coach had his kid playing, and after the game, they went up in the student section when they were leaving and got in a fight with a couple. We had
the Idaho fans throwing potatoes on the court.
Yeah, against Idaho.
Remember
they were
that
ranked
game?
6th in the nation, and they came in. It was on ESPN, which was a big deal for us. And then we had some protesters come out, and the football players grabbed them by their hair and flung them around like assault to clean the court. It was that kind of stuff all the time. It's like, no, you're not going to interrupt this game. This is the most important thing in Missoula. And so I think just sticking with the newer players and stuff every year keeps you young.
Yeah.
Hanging around young people keeps you young. I coached for a lot of years, and it's just a good thing.
So you went to the university, you mentioned. Where'd you go to high school? Where'd you grow up? Where are you from?
Havre Blue Pony, baby. Havre Pride.
Havre.
And we were AA back then, which I remind Mark Mariani of because he wouldn't have got off the bench for us. All right, maybe he would have. Maybe I'm talking about me. I wouldn't have got off the bench. But we were undefeated in Western AA.
Wow. What position did you play?
Outside linebacker and left out. I'm just kidding. No, I played mostly kickoff team. I was fast, but I was tiny. Okay. When I graduated high school, I was 5'4", 135.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was it like?
So you haven't grown much since then.
No, just width.
What was it like growing up in Havre? What did you love about it?
I grew up on a farm north of Havre. The first 7 years of my life, Dad worked for the railroad, and I enjoyed it and had a normal childhood. Then we moved to the farm, and it was Dad and I and my brother, and we had 1,000 hogs in a closed confinement operation, which my brother refused to do. So I had to do it. So that was my childhood. And I wasn't particularly in love with it, but I loved school and I loved sports, but Dad only let me play one sport, football, because it didn't interfere with the work schedule. And we were on the edge of bankruptcy growing up most of the time. The inflation in the 70s was just crushing, absolutely crushing. And then Carter had the grain embargo when Russia invaded Afghanistan, which didn't hurt Russia, but it killed a lot of small farmers. We lost probably 2 out of every 3 small farmers in our entire neighborhood during that time period, late 70s. So it was hard. Yeah. We probably worked, I don't know, 70, 80, 90 hours a week.
Was that what a lot of kids were doing in the area? I mean,
yeah, everybody
school
worked.
Wasn't as prioritized as maybe working on the farm.
Yeah, everybody on the farm worked hard. There's no such thing as a lazy farmer back then. But you still had normal kids that lived in town that were middle class and were doing fine. And we had pretty good sports teams all the way around and a lot of activities. Havre was pretty good size. I think it was about 15,000 population back then. I think it's only like 7 now. I'm not sure, but we lost the diesel shop, which was the main diesel shop for Burlington Northern between Minneapolis and Spokane. And that was a huge employer in Havre. There's probably 70 people making $70,000 a year in the early 80s. And then all of a sudden it's like, no. So that decimates your town.
So growing up, what did you see for your future? Did you want to stay in the farming, ranching industry? Did you want out? What?
Frankly, I didn't like it. And we also had 250 head of cattle too. It taught me how to work. I used to be more upset about it because I never got to play sports and I wanted to play sports more and do things. And I didn't get the opportunity, probably out of necessity, but it taught me how to work. And I knew right away that I wanted to do something else. And so I was hitting up my grade school counselors in junior high. I made them give me aptitude tests. And then I job shadowed. In 8th grade, I job shadowed a doctor, a lawyer, and an engineer. And the lawyer was the only one that seemed like they halfway liked their job. The doctors were mad about being on a beeper and being on call all the time and not having any real autonomy. Because in a small town, if you wanted to have hospital privileges, you got to sign up for the ER on the weekend. And the engineers were just always a little quieter. I got a couple of buddies that are engineers, fabulously successful. They went down to MSU and graduated 1 and 2 in their class in Chem E. And they're both great. They're both retired as of our 40th class reunion for the most part. And I'm not. So they may have chose better financially.
But you went to the better school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they went to.
Well, how did you choose U of M? Was that like early on or was it?
To put it lightly, it was kind of funny when I talked to a bunch of lawyers that I was working with. They said you should get a little broader education. Don't focus unless you want to do one kind of law. Like I could have gone down. I had a scholarship in chemical engineering to Bozeman. I could have done that, and I probably would have worked as in-house or out-of-house counsel for Dow Chemical or something like that. You can still do that. You can specialize, but I'm like, I kind of wanted to be a general practitioner. I knew I didn't want to leave the state. I thought I was going to go back to Havre because when you're young and don't have a name, at least they knew my family's last name. But some other plans happened, and I ended up being in Missoula right out of law school. And but I came to Missoula because I wanted to get broader education, liberal arts education. So I got a political science undergrad and history and econ minors. So, and I just thought that it was going to be more broad based that way, and it was a good education, I think.
So, did you graduate and pursue other interests before going back into law school, or what was that?
No, I went straight through, and I had to pay for my own college, and mom and dad couldn't help because things, like I said, were really tough. So there was no messing around. I went straight through in 4 years, high honors grad. I was an ASUM senator. I tried to fill my resume with everything to get into law school. Okay. And then I went straight through law school.
How'd you pay for school?
I had 5 jobs during law school, not counting my other jobs during undergrad. And you're not supposed to have any jobs in law school, especially freshman year. I oversaw a behavior modification program up at Hellgate Middle School. I worked for a lawyer part-time. I was the ASUM student complaint officer. So I brought complaints against professors and administrators on behalf of students. I was paid through ASUM for that. I coached in basketball for many years and also at Meadow Hill. And then I coached the debate team at Hellgate while I was in law school.
Wow. That's a lot.
And we were making, $4 to $5 an hour.
Yeah.
I average about probably 4 or 5 roommates a year in 2-bedroom houses for 7 years.
Just making it work, scraping it together.
That's it.
We got through, got it done.
Well, and I'll tell you what, it was still better than castrating hogs on a farm north of Havre.
When you start there, anything's better.
Yeah, it taught me how to work.
Mm-hmm.
And it taught me how to not complain. I mean, if you're working in these jobs where it's an air-conditioned office, you can have a soda. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Where was your first stop after law school? Who'd you go to work for?
I went to work for a guy here in town. I won't disparage him. He's been disbarred. But I'd worked for a law firm in Havre that was a very good law firm, Altman and Boucher. Altman was a UT graduate, which is a very tough law school, tough to get in, a very good education. And he was a tough old taskmaster. And I worked for him for 7 years, all the way through undergrad and law school. And Boucher is from Lolo, but he went to U of M. He was a wrestler at U of M. We had a wrestling team back then. And he just retired here about 1.5 years ago as the district court judge in Havre. And he had a rapidly deteriorating health condition. He just passed away this year. Very sad, very sad. But Dan, unbelievable guy. But those guys taught me what it took. In the first 2 years, you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
They don't teach you that in law school. They don't teach you that in undergrad or anything. So you slowly start to grasp the concept of what it's going to be, how a law firm works. And then I went to work for this guy in Missoula. And I'm going in at 5 a.m. and working until 11 at night. And because I'm trying to eat it up. I liked it, and it wasn't bad. And it was a challenge. And he was letting me take cases to court right out of law school. I had my first win 3 months out of law school.
Wild.
What 2-day trial.
What was it about law that got your attention, piqued your interest?
I think I've always hated unfairness. I just can't stand unfairness. And so it dovetails right into it. And the areas that I got into was always addressing unfairness, whether I was doing child custody stuff initially because you had to take anything that came in the door. And then I was doing contract litigation, business litigation, usually representing small businesses. And now I do personal injury where I'm tilting against, $1 billion insurance companies.
Yeah.
So,
well, I once had an attorney tell me, he said, Brandon, remember, it's a court of law, not a court of justice.
Yeah.
And just because it's legal doesn't even always mean that it's the right thing.
Yeah.
And that's got to be a unique place to find yourself in.
Well, it is. I mean,
different times.
The thing that's funny is like almost every television show, and I like some legal ones, but it's such a joke,
That's not what it's really like.
Guy comes in at 8 a.m. and they got a $3.2 million verdict at 3. Okay. No, guy comes in the real world and 3.5 years later, you might be getting ready for trial after you've basically generated a room this size full of paper on one person. Yeah. And then you're tilting at the windmill and you might lose. You might have put in all that time, you might lose. So
what was the most surprising thing about actually doing the job when you got out into being a lawyer?
When I first started, I remember thinking when people would come in, like, what am I going to do? This, I'm just going to send this person a letter that says the same thing that my client's been arguing with them. How could that possibly be any different? And then you would see that you would get massively different results just because you were a lawyer and your name was on letterhead. And that was the first thing I'm like, I just gave the same argument my client did to the guy he's fighting with. And that guy told him to pound sand, and now he's capitulating to me. And you're like, kind of cool. Got a little power for a pig farmer. Not a lot, but some. Or pig rancher, excuse me. Rancher.
Pig rancher.
You don't.
What's the difference between a farmer and a rancher?
Well, a farmer plants things and it grows and you cut it off. A pig, you don't plant them. we just didn't have a good hat like the Cowboys, so we don't have as much prestige.
Okay.
Makes sense.
What what law shows, television shows do you like?
Great question.
I actually kind of like Suits, even though it's
Suits.
just totally a joke. It's funny.
Uh,
It's, these guys, I never lose. Yeah, no, you might lose sport, and it's funny, but I kind of like it. I don't know why. Probably I just like the characters themselves. The writing's pretty good.
3 months out of law school, you're in court. You win your first case. What was that case? What'd you win?
It was a divorce case. It was a doctor and his wife. I represented the wife, and she'd already burned through a couple of attorneys, and they hadn't been doing what she wanted. And I ended up getting her lifetime maintenance, which at the time was one of the few cases in Montana that had ever happened. She was older, and it wasn't working out, but she'd sold all of her assets and put him through med school. And she hadn't worked outside the office. She was the office manager. Well, obviously he's not going to let her be the office manager, and he can't give her half the medical degree. So her income's going to go from very good to nothing. And so I took that, and it was a 2-day trial. And I found out later from a couple of the attorneys that had done family law forever that it just rocked the family law world, because nobody'd really taken a case to trial in a while. And I just, the night before, I'm like, we're going. Just give her a shot. The last offer wasn't good. So,
Fascinating.
yeah. And we took it to the Supreme Court and won that. So 1 year out of law school, I've taken a 2-day trial, won it, and then went to the Supremes and won. And then right after I filed that brief, I had to check myself in the community medical center ER. I mailed it, and then I went over because I had a bleeding ulcer. That's when I realized that maybe I should slow down a smidge.
Wow.
I had no support staff. I'm just
And the rest is history.
tilting
Here-
at windmills.
here you are.
Yeah.
Wild.
John, tell me a little bit about like the people aspect of being a lawyer. What have you learned on how to manage people or walk people through some pretty difficult situations and manage that aspect of it?
I think early on when you're younger, you want to kind of overpromise because you want them to hire you. You're hurting for cases. And so you might overpromise, and then you get yourself in a bind, and you got to tilt at the windmill. And a lot of times court doesn't help the client that much. It costs them more. It takes longer. They might have watched it on TV, but you don't understand the difference when you're going through it. And you're sitting in a deposition, you're being grilled and questioned and tore apart. Because when you're in a deposition, one of the lawyers is going to tear you apart. And generally, lawyers are not dumb. So it's going to hurt. And so when you're younger, you overpromise. When you get older, it's more like, well, I think we could be here, but we could also lose, or we could win better. But I think if we get in this range, we should think about it. You should think about it. And that, when you're doing hourly work, I don't think it's as easy, because your interests, no matter how much you're on your client's side, your interests kind of are opposed to your client in some way, because the longer it goes, the more you make.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I like doing personal injury now, because it's a percentage. If I get them more, I get more. If they get less, I get less. We're on the same team. Nobody can say, Velk, you're trying to settle this for cheap. It's like, no, I'm not. It hurts me. Just like we're on the same team. So I kind of like that aspect of it. The hourly I didn't like as well.
So I was just going to ask you what your specialty is now that you're, how many years in are you?
It'll be 35 November.
So 35 years career in law, and your specialty is personal injury.
Yep. That's what I'm only doing personal injury now. I used to do wills for friends and a few other things, but that's all I'm doing. It allows me a little more flexibility, and I may or may not be able to settle cases when I'm on the golf course by email. They don't know I'm not in a suit and tie, so that's good. Don't tell anybody.
When's the last time you wore a tie?
Oh, I think I had a tie on a week ago because my wonderful assistant of 2.5 years had to move on, and I had to hire a new guy. Mm-hmm. So I wanted him to leave the facade.
That's awesome.
I wanted to pretend I was a real lawyer.
Okay. Rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
What is your first initial memory of Missoula?
Coming over here from Havre, playing football against Big Sky, at Big Sky, new stadium, and getting off the bus. It was dark, obviously. and it smelled like wet chicken feathers. And I couldn't figure out what that was, but it was the old steam wash smoke from out in Frenchtown. And that was my first, I'm like, what is this? I didn't know there was that much farming right off the edge of Missoula, that they would have that big of a chicken farm, and who rained on them. I really thought that. And then it was like, oh, okay, this is logging. But that was my first memory. And then I think we got Bag of Burgers. It used to be where
Malfunction Junction.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so our bus pulls in there, and we all got, I think, 5. Because, when you're in high school, it was time. And I think that was only like $2.50 for 5. It was 50
5
cents
burgers
a burger
for like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we're like, this is awesome. This is the best town ever.
Steven, you don't know.
You went to college.
Yeah,
here.
they let us beat them, and we got cheap burgers. No, I'm just kidding.
You don't know Bag of Burgers.
No,
you
I've
weren't
heard the
here.
stories.
Oh. Like, I remember growing up as a kid, Bag of Burgers, and then flipping around and going through the drive-thru at 93 Stop and Go and getting their fries and duper sauce.
Yeah, you got to get the duper sauce.
Yeah.
They didn't have the duper sauce at Bag of Burger, but the burgers were cheaper.
Burgers were great.
Yeah. Well, and there was probably no fillers back then. There's no soybean. It was actually meat.
Yeah.
And so you're like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
What's your favorite coffee shop in Missoula?
I like Florence Coffee. It's not really a shop. You don't go in, but I met a couple people down at Stock Farm who the wife of the man is known as the Coffee Queen in Columbia. And since they're down there, they get really, really good coffee for Florence Coffee at a reasonable rate because they wanted to have a good cup of coffee locally. And so their coffee really is better. And the husband of her started Seattle's Best and sold out to Starbucks years ago. So neither one of them are small hitters, but I like Florence Coffee. I think they run a good shop and they run it quick.
How about restaurants when it comes to food? What's your go-to?
Oh, I got to give a shout out to Reed and Melissa Mooney up at the Keep. I like to go up at the Keep. I like the view. It used to be the Mansion when I first went there in college, but it's still the same view. And those guys, Reed worked for Shadow, Richard Hoffmaster, who used to own it up there, and then bought everything from him. And they're just, not only is it a great place to eat, it's reasonable price, great view. The patio and deck is awesome, but also they give a lot back to the community. I'm in the Elks, and I've passed ER and board trustee, and they give a lot to our golf tournament every year that we raise funds to give local scholarships. We make $8 to $10 grand a year on that little nine-hole tournament. I've been running that for, 20 years. Not that I'm old.
No, certainly not. What is the weirdest thing about Missoula?
Naked boomer bike rallies. That's it. I thought about, because somebody asked me a while back, like, what's weird about Missoula, and it's like that's weird. It's like, I don't care. I don't know what they're rallying for. Nobody said that you couldn't be naked and ride your bike at home, but you want to be seen. Super. I guess I didn't pay enough attention. It's probably some cause that is righteous and wonderful, so it's worth it. But I'm just like, what are you doing? And it's,
it can't be comfortable.
No, it's got to hurt. Yeah. And a banana seat. But I'm just like, I'm just on the edge of X, and I'm like, I could not identify less with Boomer. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And of course, everything's gone their way in life other than the Vietnam War. They've got they're like, we used to refer to it, they're the pig and the snake. It's a big mass of people, much bigger than any other generation. And so whenever they started to have children, we had a huge industry upgrade in disposable diapers and fast baby food and everything else. And then when they get a little longer, it's, everything is catered to that generation their entire time. And so I guess they're not getting enough attention, so they got to get naked on a bike.
John, what zip code do you live in here in Missoula?
59803, South Hills.
Up on the hill.
Yeah, I'm not going to give any direct. After that last comment, I could have some boomers looking out for me. Come by and lower the boom, if you will.
What do you love the most about Missoula?
Honestly, I love that it's not super big. I like the area is beautiful. There's a lot to do for a small town. We've got, I know some people kind of mock FCS football, and our basketball is smaller, but I love it. I love it. I can leave my work, drive over there, be there in 10 minutes, watch the game, be home in 15, and have a great time. And I really like the people, a lot of them. Even the people I disagree with on Facebook and fight, I like a lot of them. So I'm just trying to change minds.
Have you had any specific book that has made more of an impact on your life than others?
Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Yeah. I think it should be mandatory reading for everybody. It's a little verbose. It's a little, I don't necessarily love her writing style because it's redundant, but I think sometimes you have to repeat with redundancy to get everybody to follow it along. I think that's what it amounts to. Like I could do a Cliff's Note.
Yeah.
And I really like it.
It's a thick book.
It's thick.
It's thick. It's a long,
it's meaty.
Long, slow read.
When did you read it first?
I think I read it when I was probably 20, 21 years old. And I got some of it, but you're so much more optimistic and you're like, oh, this is kind of silly. This is not real. And then now, I think I read it about 5 years ago again. And I'm like, wow, this is exactly what's going on. Exactly what's happening in our society. We're supposedly really gaining as a society with our educational system. So why do we need to be governed harder in every area of our life when most of the people doing the governing are C students? I not all, but I don't need to be governed more. Why are we working and slaving and toiling to provide a larger and larger segment of the population to control us? They have better health care, they have better retirement, they have more days off, a lot of them have free cars. You're like, what? And they retire much earlier. And you're like, what are we doing? It's like we voluntarily imposed this. And I'm not saying it's one party or the other. A lot of politics is that way. It's like, oh, we need the government. And it's like, no, we don't. No, we don't. I try, when I talk to people, I tell them, what's a problem, a major societal problem that's been solved by a government program? I remember when LBJ said that he was going to do the Great Society. It sounded great. I was a young guy. I'm like, perfect. We'll eliminate poverty. We'll make everything better. We'll improve healthcare. Well, we spent trillions and trillions and grew a huge, huge bureaucracy around all those programs. And we got more poverty. We got worse healthcare, demonstrably, objectively, measurably. Our education system has plummeted since the federal government created the DOE under Carter in 76. It's a bright line. And I haven't seen anything. I'm not saying that we need to eliminate all government, but we need to scale it back and think about what can it do? It can do fire and police. It can put together some roads and do some things like that. It can be a safety net for the truly disadvantaged, not the people that just decide that they don't want to work hard. And because of that, we're seeing a lot of younger generation being like, why am I going to work? Why would I work? I don't get anything. I might as well sit back and let somebody else do it because I'm not getting compensated fairly. I can't buy a house. I can't do it. That's all because of government. It's all because of government spending. Yeah, there's some corporate greed, but it's really because government spending. And government can't spend with anything they can't take from you unless they print money, which causes inflation, which they're doing. Government is a parasitic organization. It doesn't create anything. It can only regulate. It can only give back a portion of that which it takes from the workers. Blue collar too, not just the wealthy. Mm-hmm. So if you can only give back a portion legitimately without printing money, it's a zero-sum net loss every time. So we should limit it. Anyway, that's Ayn Rand's message.
That might be the longest answer to a rapid fire question we've ever got on the pod.
We're going to have to call this a slow fire.
Slow fire.
Slow fire question.
Slow fire.
I may have yammered a little.
No, you're great.
I was told not to yammer so much.
No, you're great. Thank you.
I love the passion.
Okay.
Yeah. What's one of the stereotypes about attorneys that
they don't care?
You struggle with?
That that they don't care.
When you introduce you're somebody and they ask you what you do and you're an attorney, what are those?
Well, because sadly, they opened up law schools to way more people in the 70s and early 80s. They said, we'll let the market decide. So they opened up admission processes. It was way easier for people to get in. It wasn't as rigorous of a process. And frankly, that may have helped me because being a pig rancher, I might not have had the contacts to get in even with good grades.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people that came in just came in thinking I'm going to make a bunch of money. And I don't think that's a good reason to get into law. I think that's the worst reason. You can make a lot of money in business better, more ethically than exploiting people's fears, weaknesses, and bad circumstances. And nobody comes into a lawyer unless things are bad.
Right.
Except if they won the lottery and they need some financial planning or they want an adoption. There's nothing else. So they come in at their most vulnerable, and now you've got a higher percentage of attorneys that are just looking to milk it. And I don't like it. And I can't argue with it when people are like, oh, you're just blood sucking. It's like, well, I'm not, but I agree. There are some that are, and it's bad. And it's, lawyers used to be one of the highest respected professions in the early 70s, late 60s. Pharmacists are still up there. Maybe not after this last little gig, but lawyers have plummeted.
When did it change the stereotype to lawyers are just sharks? Where did that change in the industry?
When they let everybody in, because then you started to see advertisement, you see, ambulance chasing, you see all kinds of malarkey. I think advertising, yes, it's a First Amendment right. You can do it. I think it really cheapened the profession.
And you don't really see it as much in Missoula, as much as you do in some major cities.
Yeah, you go to Vegas,
there's some of it
every
here,
billboard,
right?
You got a wreck, got a wreck. But most of the people coming in are just there for a week or 4 days anyway. And so they get in a wreck. That's what they're going to look at. Nobody reads the paper locally in Vegas. Nobody, or
which is
LA
crazy to me that works. That type of marketing actually works for them, because I don't know that I've ever called a business because of a billboard I passed.
No, because you're probably not, you're not middle America.
It's just interesting.
You're not middle America. Wow. The middle class and poor are much more susceptible to that. And so they go with it. They go with the odds. They go, oh, he's got over $2 billion in settlements. Maybe I'll get $1 billion. It's like, no, you got an offender bender. you didn't break any bones. You got a soft tissue injury. It's not going to be $1 billion. But they're like, wow, this could be great.
So tell me a little bit more about that tension of obviously loving what you do and wanting to help people and running a business. How do you manage that?
Well, I've told people this, I've practiced 35 years now almost, and I'm not close to retiring. And my assistant that just took off because the strains of the job were too much. She said, you cut everybody's fee almost. You cut it all the time. And I'm like, yeah, they're hurt and it's not working out fair for them. And they're going to have a lifetime injury and they don't even really know it. It's going to get worse when they get 40 and 45 years old and their ligaments and tendons dry up and they'll have a worse injury. And it's, I'm just going to create goodwill. And I don't have to advertise then either because I got good word of mouth. But that's the deal. I think I probably could have retired 10 years ago if I would have just stuck it to everybody, if I would have been part of the machine.
Yeah.
But I don't like it. I don't like it. And I don't think that's why I got into it. I like to help people. I'll probably sit at the desk. I'll take a lot less cases, I hope, but I'll probably sit there until I croak. I'll have a few cases. I might take some more cases when I really wind back that need to be taken, but have no financial reward. But it needs to be something where we stop bureaucratic overreach or things that are massively unfair, but there's no financial incentive. You know, I kind of like public interest law.
You're kind of like Matlock, a local Matlock.
I'm that old. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what I was thinking. You're going to keep doing this until.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to have a time where my mind atrophies.
Yeah.
I've seen so many people come in over the years when I used to do wills and they'd wait until that day to retire and they'd come in at 65 and I'd do their will and they'd be gone in a year because they didn't know what to do. They'd get depressed and it literally would kill, not everybody, but a lot did. I think we're made to work. I think we're made to keep our mind sharp. That's what we're made for.
Yeah.
You know,
And you combat a lot of that by being out on the golf course frequently.
yeah. My problem is I ended up being my own client here about a decade ago. I got mowed, 55-mile-an-hour T-bone collision, and I ripped my labrum in 3 pieces, and that's healed. I scratch half my back, and I can't with my right arm, which wasn't hurt because I must have hurt
Stephen,
my
will you
rotator.
scratch that for him?
Yeah, could you get that? Yeah, because I must have hurt a little on the farm, the rotator. But the left's fine. I got released to go back to basketball, which I love, and I was still playing 5 times a week as a 50-year-old. And I got bumped lightly, and my back went out for the first time in my life, and I'd never had that before. And I thought, well, I'll just tough through it. And I was down on hands and knees for a week, and I'm like, I guess my career is over at basketball, so I'll get into golf more. And then my back goes out if I try and swing with any strength anymore. So when I hit my shot, most of the time I joke if I hit it a little high puffer, I say puff the magic dragon. And all the guys I golf with are scratch or pros or plus handicap. They're all still banging at about 300 to 320, and I'm hitting it 210 if I nuke it for me. So it's pretty pathetic.
You must be good company though if they keep inviting you.
That's it. A lot of people will complain and say that they don't like me heckling, but deep down they love it. They need it. It's the same way on the basketball court when I'm sitting courtside.
You do some heckling. I mean,
a good story is Moody, On and Moody, that he's over in Spain now.
Yep.
And we got to be pretty close. And when he was playing for Southern Utah, he came down on one shot and shot maybe he's 2 feet from me when he launches it.
Just normal range for him.
Yeah, exactly. And he was wearing a little headband then. And he missed it. And I looked at him and he turned and I go, oh, Cobra Kai, wax off. I called him Cobra Kai, and he was running down the court and he looked back, he goes, that's funny. That's good. Right. And so that's the kind of stuff I'm saying. And then he came down and made one. And a year later, Cobby, Chris, says, hey, we got Cobra Kai coming in. He's transferring from Southern Utah. The coach left down there and he's going to come to Missoula because it's closer to North Dakota where he's from. I said, awesome. So Mac Anderson brings him out to go golfing at the country club. And I go to his car to pick him up, and he gets out of the car and he looks me right in the eye and goes, Cobra Kai. And he points at me. He remembered. Awesome. It's that kind of stuff. So he liked the heckling, and it sat with him for a year and made him a better person because he got rid of the headband.
So he's a better player. He's in Spain playing professionally today because of you.
Yeah, it's all me.
You spurred him on.
It's all me.
That's awesome. You do the same thing on the golf course.
I bring out the best in others through, I break them down, and then I let them build themselves up. While I then again continually break them down.
That's great leadership. John, I got to tell you, in terms of marketing, I don't know why, but in the Smith family, it's become this thing for the last several years. Whenever we're driving down Orange Street, somebody in our car will say, "Oh, there's Velk's office." Every time, to the point where it should be annoying. And so, in fact, this morning I just got a text message a little while ago from my wife that said, "Hey, love you. Hope you have a great day. Have fun recording with John Velk. Maybe ask him where his office is."
Awesome.
I don't know why, but it's become a thing.
That's funny.
Every time we drive by, oh, there's Velk's office.
Yeah, I had a buddy that rented from me, Mike Black, very bright guy from Havre, but he's been over here for some time. And in Helena, he ran for the Supreme Court here a few years ago. And Kirsten Pabst, who was our county attorney, she's a Havre gal too. And they both rented from me at different times. They called it the Little Yellow Office of Law. Little Yellow Office of Law. Anyway, that's how they always referred to it. And I bought that in 97 with my old law partner. And I didn't know if I could afford it because I'd married now my ex-wife with 3 kids, sole source of income. I'm spooked. And then my old law partner, pretty bright guy, he fights with me on Facebook, by the way. But anyway, he said, well, we're paying more rent where Paul Ryan's office is now. That's where we're at. He goes, we're paying more than the mortgage. He goes, and you've shown you can do that for a year. And I'm like, oh yeah. All right, let's go. Best decision ever. Because you got some equity. And the price I got it for might be a little less than it goes for today.
Yeah, unreal.
But it's not worth more, according to the tax officials. No, I'm just kidding.
How often do you walk around the corner to number 1 euros?
quite a bit.
I was going to say that's
I like
dangerous.
the Court Norrises.
That's got to be dangerous.
Court Norris is good people.
Yeah.
I've helped all of them over the years, and they've helped me
It's
get fatter.
good.
But no,
Great food. But if it was down the street from my office,
it's dangerous. You get out sometimes, you're like, well, I think I'm going to go get a salad, and you smell it. And you're like, I guess I'm just going to walk around the block a lot. It's dangerous.
That's awesome.
It's like, boy, if I hadn't smelled it, I would be having a salad right now.
Well, John, do you have any great stories of exchanges on Facebook that you've gotten into in the last few years?
I think those are better left on Facebook.
Fair enough.
I did get one person one time. Now you think about this. There's probably been thousands of fights over just the last 5 years. Only about 4 or 5 years ago that I started going off because I didn't care anymore about. I didn't worry about everybody else's opinion all the time. Finally got old enough. But out of 1,000, I think I changed one person's mind one time. But they only sent me that they agreed with me on Snapchat, and it disappeared before I could screenshot it. So I got nothing. I got no proof that I won an argument ever, but I did. I swear.
The lawyer who never won.
I know it. If I could have
Except for
snapped that, I could have used that for quite some time.
Some leverage there.
Leverage.
That's awesome.
Leverage. No, I'm doing that because a lot of times when you're sitting at the office after you've dictated a bunch of letters, you're waiting for them to come back to your desk. So it's like, well, why wouldn't I listen to Sirius radio, 80s, of course, and start fighting with people on Instagram, Twitter,
best decade of music,
and Facebook. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I love that you find that just so. Yeah, you have so much joy on your face talking about fighting with people.
Well, you are
a lawyer.
Well, and I kind of wanted to run for politics. I've had a lot of people over the years say, Velk, you got to run for mayor. The problem is the mayor doesn't really do anything unless there's a tie or unless a majority of the council already agrees with them. And I believe, based on my analysis, that the majority of the city council does not agree with me. So I don't think I want to sit through a bunch of bureaucratic meetings forever, even if I was able to win, which is very unlikely. But even if I was, sit there and get outvoted every day. I'm like, yeah, I got a better record on Facebook with that one win.
Before we wrap up here, a little more serious question for you. Based on demographics from what we've seen on podcasts, got a lot of young entrepreneur, just people ready to grab life and pursue dreams and careers. If you had the opportunity to sit down with a 20-year-old who's just getting into law school, what advice, encouragement would you give them?
A young lawyer?
Yeah.
Just specifically? I would tell them to not buy into the pushed narrative that you have to join a big firm and be a cog in the machine. I think you can spend years lost in a firm, not all, but lost in a lot of firms, and never see the light of day, never really get to have client interaction. And then after you've crushed yourself and missed out on family time with maybe your spouse and children, if you've got them at a young age, then you're told during an economic downturn that you're not partnership material and you're done. You don't get those 7 years back. You might have been compensated fairly, but I don't think, I just know so many people over the years that are so disappointed by that, because when you're in law school, that's what everybody thinks. You see it on TV, you see it in the movies. It's pushed because a lot of the major donors to the law school are big firms. And I have nothing against it, but I don't think it's right for everybody. I think there's a lot more people that are like, I want to dip my toe in the pond. I want to get out there. I want to meet clients. I want to take small claims cases. I want to feel it. And instead of waiting 7 years, working 70 hours a week to meet a billable hour requirement, only to be told that, man, you just didn't quite cut it. We're letting Frank and you're out because we can't hire all of our associates. And I've just seen that over the years. It's really disappointing. And I also wouldn't say that, Missoula's got like one of the highest percentages of lawyers per capita of anywhere west of the Mississippi, because we only got the only law school in Montana. And once everybody gets here, they're like, hey, I kind of like it. Yeah. I'll hang out here and throw up a shingle. And it's like small town law based on the people I talk to, it's way better. You know, you go up to Malta and there's 3 lawyers and the judge, and you meet for breakfast every day.
Sounds pretty good.
You get a lot of things hashed out, and it's a lot fairer for clients.
Yeah.
And you're not worried about gouging, you know, and you know everybody. And so they're not doing dirty tricks on you.
Yeah.
That's the biggest bad thing.
It makes sense. Reputation,
Yeah.
I mean, always matters, but reputation in a small community can lose it instantaneous.
Yeah, you got to be a lot straighter shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't hide. That's like I told people in Havre, if you're a bad actor in Havre, that's why there's so many good people still there. If you're a bad actor, you don't just get driven out of town, you get beaten up and driven out of town because everybody knows.
Yeah.
And, you know, here in Missoula, we've had lawyers and other professionals doing bad things to people for a long time before it finally gets exposed. Well, they've already ruined a lot of lives. There's more anonymity in a greater population base. And so don't give up on small communities. They also need legal care a lot more than our over legalized society here.
Well, we'll get you out on this one, John. Thanks so much for being here. But if looking back over your life, what would you change? What would you do the same?
You know, 10 years ago, I would have told you there's a lot of things I would have changed because I made a lot of mistakes, and a lot of things were much harder than I thought they were going to be. But in retrospect, I'm really happy where I'm at. I've got 3 stepchildren, 6 grandchildren. They spend holidays with me. I'm close to all of them. They're a lot older than I would have had on my own. My boy just turned 41 this July because my ex was older than me. And so everything was so accelerated. I'm buying cars for them when I can't afford my own car, you know, and the insurance was through the moon. But, you know, I don't think I would do anything different. Yeah, I just hacked on insurance. Sorry
That's
about
funny.
that. Yeah, sorry about
That's
that.
funny.
Sorry, Glides. But, you know, I don't think I'd do anything different because I'm really happy with where I'm at. I probably maybe would do a little better health-wise, and I wouldn't go across Reserve and Brooks in 2014 after a pro-am at Canyon River. I'd miss that attack. I'd miss that accident. I don't think I gained anything that one.
Thanks for coming in. Really appreciated you today.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, John. Appreciate you, man.
Appreciate it. Yep.
What's up, Missoula? This is Nick Balla, producer of the Missoula Podcast. We truly appreciate you hanging out with us as we dive into the stories that make our city special. If you could do us a quick favor and follow the show wherever you are listening, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, maybe you're watching on YouTube, so hit that little subscribe button. It really helps us out. Head on over to www.themissoulapodcast.com for more information, and we'll see you next week.